I knew that my father would have left me something in his will when he passed away. We were so close. So when he did pass and I was left with nothing, my stepmother got everything, I knew something fishy was up. But what I have unraveled over the course of 3 months is enough to leave you disgusted, satisfied, and also wanting more because, well, she's up to something. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's very, very bad. I stood in my childhood home, trembling with rage as my stepmother, Vanessa, smirked at me. With perfectly manicured nails and a cold smile, she informed me that my father had cut me out of the will completely. According to her, he had finally seen me for what I truly was. The worst part came when I begged for just one thing, my dead mother's jewelry collection. She actually laughed in my face, telling me those tacky things had already been sold to pay for my father's medical bills. I was still crying in my vehicle when a text from an unknown number appeared, urging me not to give up yet and to meet them the next day because they had something my father wanted me to see. Could this stranger know what I suspected all along? That Vanessa somehow turned my father against me? Or is this just another cruel trick in the nightmare my life has become since she wormed her way into my family 3 years ago? I'm 32 and female, and I lost my mom to cancer about 7 years ago. It was devastating, but father and I supported each other through the grief. We were always close, calling or texting daily and having dinner together at least once a week. Mother had left me a letter saying she wanted me to have her jewelry collection when I got married someday. Nothing super valuable, just sentimental pieces she collected over the years, including her own mother's wedding ring and a locket with a family photo inside. Father kept the collection safe in his bedroom. Then Vanessa entered our lives. Dad met her at a charity event 3 years after Mom died, and she was all smiles and supportive comments when Dad was around. The whirlwind romance surprised me, but I was just happy to see Dad smiling again. They got married within 6 months of meeting, and at first I tried to welcome her into our family. I invited her to lunch, brought thoughtful gifts, and made an effort to include her in holiday plans. But when Father wasn't around, Vanessa was. Just different. Nothing overly hostile at first, just little digs. Comments about my weight. Oh, I thought you were trying to lose a few pounds. My career choices. Ugh, non-profit work is noble, but don't you want a real career? And my relationship status. Ugh, still single. Well, not everyone gets to find love. I ignored the comments, chalking them up as awkward step-family dynamics, but things started changing between Dad and me. He began canceling our regular dinners. My calls went to voicemail more often, and when we did talk, he seemed distracted, sometimes even irritated with me. Last Christmas was when I first realized something was seriously off. I arrived at Dad and Vanessa's house with armful of presents, excited to spend the holiday together. While helping in the kitchen, I overheard Vanessa talking to Dad in his study. She was telling him I only visit because I want his money, and I was waiting for him to just pass on to collect my inheritance, but you want to know the worst part? Dad did not even defend me. He just sounded tired as he considered her poisonous suggestion. I was too shocked to confront him, and I made it through dinner somehow, then left early claiming a headache. Dad barely seemed to notice. 6 months later, Father was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. I was devastated and immediately tried to help with his care, but Vanessa took over completely. She hired a private nurse, arranged all of his doctor appointments, and began managing his visitors, which meant restricting my visits. Whenever I showed up, she would claim Dad was too tired or that the doctor had limited visitors. When I did get to see him, he seemed unusually disoriented and would often fall asleep mid-conversation. During this difficult time, I joined a grief support group where I met James. He lost his sister to cancer and worked as a lawyer to specialize in estate law. We connected over our shared experience and eventually started to date. James was the first person who believed me when I shared my concerns about Vanessa's behavior. At Dad's condition, as it started to worsen, Vanessa completely barred me from the hospital. The few times I managed to sneak in by bringing coffee for the nursing staff, Father seemed confused about why I had not been visiting. He asked things like, "Where have you been? I thought you would come by yesterday, but I tried. I'd been turned away by his nurse who said he was, quote, too weak for visitors." Well, father passed away last month. I wasn't there. Vanessa called me after he was already gone, and at the funeral she played the grieving widow perfectly, accepting condolences while subtly keeping me away from Dad's closest friends. When people approached me, she'd swoop in and steer the conversation away, often mentioning how, quote, difficult things had been between Dad and me in his final months. Then came the day I described at the beginning of this post. Vanessa invited me to the house to discuss arrangements and dropped the bomb that Dad had changed his will shortly before he died, cutting me out completely. Well, when I asked about Mom's jewelry, thinking surely Father would not have included that in the will since it was promised to me, Vanessa told me, she already sold it. I broke down. Those pieces were my last physical connection to my mom. The thought a stranger would be wearing them, not knowing their significance, it crushed me. Vanessa just watched me cry with this smug little smile, and then came the mysterious text as I sat sobbing in my vehicle. Don't give up. Meet me tomorrow at Harrison and Partners Law. I have something your father wanted you to see. I have no idea who sent this or what they might have. I mean, part of me thinks that it could be a cruel prank, maybe even from Vanessa herself, but what if it's real? What if Dad did leave something for me? The will reading is scheduled for next week, and Vanessa seems confident that she's getting everything. The text said to meet tomorrow morning. I don't know. Should I go? Am I just setting myself up for more heartbreak? And if there's something that could challenge Vanessa's claim to the will, would I be wrong to use it? My gut says she's manipulated Dad somehow, but I can't prove it. I feel like I'm going crazy with grief and suspicion, so let me ask you guys this. Am I the a-hole for wanting to investigate this and potentially challenge my father's will? I love my dad and I don't care about his money. I just want to know the truth about his final months and maybe, if I'm lucky, recover something of my mother's. So tell me guys, what should I do? Update number 1. First of all, thank you for your advice. You've given me courage. I went to Harrison Partners this morning, half expecting to be stood up or walked into some elaborate prank. Instead, I was met by Eleanor, Dad's executive assistant of 2 decades. She hugged me like I was family, which immediately brought tears to my eyes. It wasn't until we were seated in a private conference room that she explained why she texted me. Eleanor pulled out a folder and explained that my father had known something wasn't right and he just needed proof. According to Eleanor, Dad had grown suspicions of Vanessa in his final months. He noticed his medication made him unusually disoriented, and he could not understand why I supposedly wasn't returning his calls or going for a visit. During a moment of clarity, he confided in Eleanor, who helped him set up hidden cameras in their home. Eleanor. She showed me the footage on her laptop, and I felt physically ill watching it. There was Vanessa clearly tampering with Dad's medication, adding extra pills to his daily organizer. Another clip showed her deleting text messages from his phone. Messages from me. She'd been hiding cards and gifts that I sent, telling Father I was too busy to visit, and the most darning footage showed Vanessa on the phone with somebody, laughing about how Dad would be, quote, gone soon, and how she would finally get what she deserved after playing nursemaid to this old man. I could barely breathe while watching this. Eleanor. She explained that Dad's been secretly meeting with a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but James' mentor, Mr. Harrison. See, Dad had recorded a video testimony, and according to Eleanor, had revised his will after discovering Vanessa's deception. He made sure it was ironclad, Eleanor said. He knew that she would contest it. When I asked why Eleanor had not come forward sooner, she explained that Dad had made her promise to wait until after his death. He was afraid that Vanessa might do something if she was confronted while she was still vulnerable. The plan was for everything to come out at the will reading. There was one more piece of information Eleanor had for me. She'd seen Vanessa with a business card from Elite Vintage Jewelry the day after Father died, and she told me that Vanessa was smiling and talking about finally getting rid of some old junk. I left Harrison and Partners with the business card burning a hole in my pocket and a storm of emotions raging inside of me. Part of me wants to confront Vanessa immediately, shove the evidence in her face and watch her squirm, but James advises patience. The will reading is still a week away and we need to be strategic. My immediate priority is finding Mom's jewelry. If Vanessa sold it to Elite Vintage, maybe I can track down the pieces before they're gone forever. But what if they've already been sold to other buyers? What if they've been melted down and resold overseas? And there's something else bothering me. Eleanor mentioned that Dad's private nurse, Marianne, had been calling her repeatedly since Dad's death. Sounding nervous, she called me 3 times today, but hangs up when I answer. What does she know? Is she involved in Vanessa's scheme, or does she have information that could help? The will reading is in 7 days, and I have the video evidence of Vanessa's deception, but I'm still missing Mom's jewelry. Should I confront the nurse? Should I go to Elite Vintage immediately, or should I just play it cool until the will reading and hope that Dad revises his will is enough to bring Vanessa down? Update number 2. It's been 3 days since my last update, and I cannot believe how much has happened. First, I want to thank everybody for your advice about contacting Dad's nurse. You're right, it turned out to be crucial. I met Marianne for coffee yesterday, and she broke down almost immediately. Turns out that Vanessa has been paying her extra to restrict my visits and to administer additional pain medication to Dad right before I was scheduled to arrive. That's why he was always so groggy when I managed to see him. Marianne was racked with guilt and admitted Vanessa had threatened her nursing license if she did not comply. But here's the bombshell. Marianne secretly recorded several conversations with Vanessa on her phone, and one Vanessa explicitly states her plan to, quote, adjust his medicine to keep Dad compliant while she, quote, takes care of the will situation. Marianne has agreed to provide these recordings as evidence, and with James' help, I tracked down Mom's jewelry collection to Elite Vintage Jewelry. The owner was initially reluctant to discuss his client, citing confidentiality, but when James gently mentioned the potential legal implication of purchasing items under suspicious circumstance, especially items that could be contested as part of an estate, he became much more cooperative. The gut punch? Vanessa sold the entire collection 2 weeks before Father died. Most pieces had already been sold to various buyers across the country. I broke down right there in that store, explaining that these were my mother's heirlooms that had been promised to me. The owner seemed genuinely sympathetic and provided the buyer's information off of the record. But there was one piece still in a shop. It was the heart-shaped locket with an old photo inside. The owner said it wasn't worth much from a jewelry perspective, so it hadn't sold. When I opened it, I immediately recognized the photo, Mother and Dad on their honeymoon. I bought it back on the spot, tears streaming down my face, and that night, examining the locket more closely at home, I noticed something odd. The photo seemed to sit unusually thick in the frame, and when I carefully removed it, I discovered a tiny SD card, mini, taped securely to the back of the photo. With shaking hands, I inserted the card into my laptop. It contained audio recordings of Vanessa on the phone with someone named Marco. They were discussing their plan to get Dad's money, push me out of the picture, and finally live the luxurious life that they thought they deserved once he was gone. In one recording, she laughed about how easy it was to manipulate Dad's medication to keep him compliant and confused. James and I spent hours researching this Marco person. What we discovered left me speechless. He isn't just Vanessa's lover. Records show that they were still legally married when she married Father. Their divorce was never finalized, making her marriage to Father completely invalid. This isn't Vanessa's first rodeo. She had 3 wealthy husbands in the past decade, each marriage ending with husband's death and Vanessa inheriting everything. The pattern is very chilling. Well, James also found that Dad's prenup with Vanessa contained a morality clause. If she had defrauded him in any way at all, she would receive nothing. Between the bigamy, the medication tampering, and the recording of all of the evidence of her plans, we have more than enough to go and challenge the will. The will readings tomorrow, and my hands have not stopped shaking since we've made this discovery. I've organized the evidence, the videos from Eleanor, the recordings from Marianne, the audio files from the SD card, and the marriage recordings providing Vanessa's bigamy. But here's where I'm stuck. Vanessa texted me, offering to make peace over dinner tonight. She says that she may have been hasty about some of Mother's jewelry and thinks that we should clear the air before tomorrow's reading. James thinks that it's a trap, that she might suspect something and is trying to figure out what I know. But what if she has some of Mother's jewelry she hasn't sold yet? What if this is my only chance to recover more pieces before she disappears with Dad's money after the reading? Should I meet her and risk tipping it off? I don't know, or should I wait and unleash everything tomorrow at the will reading? Update number 3. Hey guys, it's me. Oh, here's the update. You ready? I decided to meet Vanessa for dinner last night, despite many of you warning me it's a trap. You're right, of course, but not in the way any of us expected, see. I arrived in the upscale restaurant she chose, determined to keep my cool no matter what. Vanessa was already there, dressed in designer clothing, and I recognized, as purchased with Dad's credit cards, of course. But what made my blood boil was seeing Mother's sapphire bracelet on her wrist, the one that she claimed was already sold. She greeted me with air kisses and practiced sympathetic expressions following James' advice. I had a small recording device in my purse capturing everything. Vanessa began with a rehearsed apology from what she called misunderstandings between us. Then she got to the real deal of the dinner. She offered to be generous with a small monthly allowance from Dad's estate if I agreed not to contest the will. She even hinted she might recover some of my mother's less valuable jewelry pieces, all while twisting Mom's bracelet on her wrist. I played my part, acting graceful for her supposed generosity, while pushing for details. And that's when Vanessa starts slipping up. She mentioned selling most of the jewelry before Dad even passed. She referred to the conversation with a friend about their plan for Dad's money after what she called his inevitable passing. Well, when I gently suggested that perhaps Dad had not been in his right mind when he changed the will, Vanessa's mask slipped completely. She leaned forward with her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. The messages were clear. She'd taken down rich people, much more smarter people than me. She claimed Father had died, believing I abandoned him, and warned that if I contested the will, she would make sure everyone believed I was a terrible daughter. Fighting back tears, I pretended to be intimidated, saying I just wanted something to remember my parents by. Vanessa smiled triumphantly and slid Mom's bracelet across the table. Consider this a goodwill gesture. Be smart tomorrow. There might be more. I nearly broke character when I touched the bracelet because this tangible piece of Mother that I thought would last forever is here. I managed to thank Vanessa and agreed to her terms, then escaped to the bathroom where I broke down in private. When I returned to the table, I noticed Vanessa texting somebody furiously. She quickly put her phone away when she noticed me, but not before I glimpsed the name. Marco. After dinner, I met James and Mr. Harrison at their office to finalize our plans for the will reading. We contacted Dad's business partners with, quote, concerns about the will, ensuring that they would attend, and we compiled all the evidence into a presentation, and James prepared to act as if he'd never met me. At 3 a.m., Eleanor called in a panic. Vanessa broke into, your father's home office. She's tearing the place apart, looking for something. The security system alerted me. So James and I rushed over to find the office, ransacked, papers everywhere, the hidden camera Dad had installed ripped from the wall, the safe behind his desk was open and empty. It's 5 a.m. now, the will reading is in 4 hours. Vanessa clearly knows something's up and she's desperately searching for evidence Dad might have left behind. The most troubling part is how she knew about the hidden camera. Unless somebody on our side is feeding her information. A rat? I'm exhausted and terrified, but also strangely, I feel calm. In 4 hours' time, it's going to be it. Either justice will be served or Vanessa will have gotten away with everything. James keeps reassuring me that our evidence is solid and backed up in multiple places, but what if she doesn't show up at the reading? What if she's already fled with whatever assets of Dad's that she liquidated? And who can I really trust when someone might be leaking info to her? The sun's rising now, and I'm clutching Mom's bracelet like a talisman. You know, by the time I write my next update, this will all be over, one way or the other. Wish me luck. Final update, it's been 3 weeks since the will reading, and OP is ready to share what happened. Prepare yourselves, because even I could not have predicted how it all unfolded. I arrived at the law office an hour early, running on caffeine and adrenaline, after our middle-of-the-night discovery of the ransacked office. Well, James and Mr. Harrison were already seated, setting up the video evidence and going over strategies one last time. Vanessa strutted in 5 minutes late, dressed head to toe in designer, sporting a new diamond tennis bracelet I'd never seen. She avoided looking at me in the eyes. It was a tell of weakness. whispering intensely with a well-dressed man she introduced as her financial advisor. As the man turned to shake hands with Mr. Harrison, I recognized him from the photos we found online. Oh, Marco, her still legal husband. They'd grown so confident that they didn't even try to hide their connection. The smug smile froze on Vanessa's face when Dad's lawyer walked in. James, my fiancé. The color drained from her face as James greeted me with a small hug, and she realized the connection between the lawyer handling the will and the woman she's been trying to cut out of it. She had never met James before and had no idea that he was involved with me. Before reading the will, James solemnly announced that Mr. Harrison had requested we watch a video first, a recording with my father 2 weeks before he passed. The large screen on the wall came to life, showing Dad, gaunt but clear-eyed. In the video, Dad explained that if we were watching it, it meant that he's gone, and his suspicions about Vanessa had been proven correct. He detailed discoveries of her manipulation, the medication tampering, the intercepted messages, her convos with old Marco about their plans for the money. I'd say the most heartbreaking moment came when Dad's voice broke, as he expressed how he had trusted Vanessa with his life, home, and heart, but worst of all, he had trusted her when she turned him against his only real family, me. Vanessa lunged for her purse, but Dad's business partner blocked the door. One by one, we presented our evidence. The medication analysis showing deliberate overdose, Nurse Marianne's testimony about visitor restrictions, Eleanor's documentation of intercepted messages, the recordings of Vanessa and Marco planning Dad's death, and finally the proof of bigamy that invalidated her marriage to Dad. Mr. Harrison announced that given the evidence at hand, fraud, medicine tampering, bigamy, Vanessa would receive nothing according to the prenuptial morality clause. Furthermore, James added, the police have been notified about the medicine tampering, which constitutes attempted murder in this state. When James read Dad's authentic will, I could not hold back tears. Dad left the bulk of the estate to me, with generous donations to cancer research foundations and medical ethics programs, and the will included a heartfelt apology to me, with Dad's expression how sorry he was for ever doubting me, and hoping his decisions would make amends for his blindness. Then came Dad's final surprise. James revealed that Dad had suspected Vanessa might try to sell my mother's jewelry pieces as she often complained about their outdated style. So Dad, oh father, secretly replaced the valuable pieces with high-quality replicas months ago. The real collection was in a safety deposit box with a letter from me. Only the locket had been real. Dad knew it wouldn't fetch much money, but its sentimental value to me was priceless, and that is where the SD card was. Dad left me proof. As police officers arrived to question Vanessa and Marco, the biggest shock came. Marco immediately starts distancing himself from Vanessa, claiming he was just following her instructions, had no idea about no medical tampering. He offered to testify against her in exchange for leniency. The look of betrayal on Vanessa's face as her own husband threw her under the bus was pitiful at most. In the 3 weeks since then, things have moved quickly. Vanessa was arrested for fraud, elder abuse, medication tampering. She's currently awaiting trial, denied bail. They call her a flight risk. Marco turned state evidence, but was later arrested in connection with another case in another state. I've spent days going through Dad's papers, learning just how meticulous he was in building his case against Vanessa. Even in his final months, weakened by cancer and manipulated by his wife, he was working to protect me and ensure justice would be served. Well, yesterday, I went to visit that security deposit box. I found Mother's real jewelry collection exactly as I remembered it. The letter Dad left explained how he had grown suspicious of Vanessa's interest in the jewelry and had quietly replaced the pieces with replicas, keeping the originals safe with me. Anyways, guys, thank you for the support throughout this nightmare. Your advice has given me strength when I needed it most. I hope I never have to post here again, no offense, but I'm grateful you were here when I needed it. It's over now.